Think about this for a second. Just imagine deciding to, like, tape a raw live lightning bolt directly to your kitchen wall.
Oh my gosh.
Right, just so you could have the convenience of boiling water for your morning tea.
Hmm.
I mean, it sounds absolutely insane.
Completely reckless.
Exactly, like the kind of behavior that would get you locked up.
Mm.
But in reality, that is exactly what is happening right behind the drywall of every single house on the planet.
It really is.
Hey, everyone. Man, take a deep breath of that air. It is absolutely gorgeous out here today.
So good.
The gravel is crunching under our boots. Those birds are going absolutely crazy up in the canopy. And the river is just, it's rushing by with this perfect, steady rhythm.
It's the best.
I am so incredibly glad we decided to get out of the house, hit this river trail, and bring you along with us.
Yeah, you walking right alongside us right now as our silent third partner on this hike.
It's great to have you here.
We were just saying how much we desperately needed this walk just to clear our heads from the week. It really is the perfect morning for it. The humidity broke, the breeze is just right, and honestly, we just came out here to shoot the breeze, just have a totally casual, relaxed conversation about whatever random things pop into our heads while we walk.
Exactly.
It's the best way to decompress. Just let the environment dictate the thoughts. But actually, looking right up ahead, check that out, peeking through the trees on the left bank. Is that an old watermill?
Whoa. Yeah, it is. Look at the sheer size of that wooden wheel.
It's huge.
It is massive. It's completely covered in this thick, vibrant green moss, and the wood looks like it's just sagging down into the river current.
Yeah, falling apart.
It looks like it hasn't turned a single inch in a solid century. Just a massive, decaying monument left out in the woods.
It's incredible just standing here looking at it. I mean, you can almost hear the ghost of what it must have sounded like back in its heyday.
Oh, for sure.
The heavy oak wood groaning under the strain, the river water violently crashing over the paddles, grinding the grain inside. And, looking at this rusty, rotting gear, it actually gets my brain turning.
How so?
Well, because this wheel, this exact structure, used to be the literal physical spark of energy for this entire old town down the river.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was the mechanical center of everything, moving their local economy forward, providing the fundamental raw power they needed just to survive the winter.
Right, right.
And honestly, it's a physical reminder of how utterly obsessed human beings are with harnessing raw energy out of nature, which perfectly lines up with what we wanted to dig into today on this walk.
It really does.
We wanted to talk about the absolute unsung hero of the modern world, specifically focusing across the pond in the UK, the electrician, or as they universally, almost affectionately call them over there, the Sparky.
Oh, I absolutely love that term, the Sparky.
It's great.
It just sounds so incredibly friendly, so approachable, almost like a sports mascot or a guy you'd grab a pint with at the pub. But the dark, terrifying reality of what they actually do for a living is taming invisible lightning. That's a very cute name for an incredibly lethal profession.
It really is.
And looking at that old mossy mill, it feels like the right place to start. It's the literal spark of industry. So let's get the show on the road, meaning let's actually get our boots moving down this winding dirt path and really dive into this discussion while we hike.
I am ready.
We have a massive amount of ground to cover today, both physically on this trail and mentally with this topic. We're going to take you on a journey exploring exactly how we pull raw, untamed, violent power out of the environment.
From water wheels to smart homes.
Exactly. We're going to trace the history from primitive water wheels, like this beautiful decaying ruin right here, all the way to the ultra-complex, hyper-connected smart homes of today.
It's a wild evolution.
It is completely wild. And the Sparky is the lone figure standing right in the middle of it, armed with a pair of pliers, making sure we don't all blow ourselves to kingdom come.
Absolutely. And speaking of blowing things up, or at least making a catastrophic mess of things, watch your step right here on the edge of the bank.
Oh yeah, lots of mud.
Look down at where the river water has washed up all that junk from the current. See that massive, chaotic tangle?
Yeah. What is that?
It's just old, dirty fishing line mixed with river weeds, cracked twigs, and plastic wrappers.
Gross.
It is just a knotted, impossible, hardened ball of garbage catching the morning current. You would need a sharp pair of scissors, tweezers, and like 3 hours of infinite patience just to find the end of one single string in that disaster.
Oh wow, yeah, that is completely nasty. I wouldn't even know where to begin untangling that mess.
Nobody would.
It honestly looks like a frantic bird tried to build a nest while it was having a full-blown panic attack.
Yeah.
There's chaos woven into more chaos.
Chaos woven into chaos. I like that. And honestly, that tangled, dangerous mess of fishing line and twigs washing up on the rocks. That is exactly the visual I get in my head when I think of early Victorian era electrical wiring.
Wait, really?
Oh, yeah. Because the early days of domestic electricity in the UK were what you could accurately call spicy spaghetti.
Spicy spaghetti.
Yeah. And when I say spicy spaghetti, I'm talking about a highly dangerous, totally chaotic, unorganized mess of live, lethal electrical wires just shoved haphazardly into the walls and ceilings of old homes.
Oh, man.
It was spicy because if you accidentally brushed against it, it would bite you with a lethal electrical shock.
Right.
And it was spaghetti because there was zero organization, just a tangled, looping nightmare of copper.
Which is wild to think about because today we just assume everything has a safety standard. But electricity wasn't always this highly regulated, perfectly color-coded utility.
Not at all. I mean, the electrical trade didn't just magically float down from heaven fully formed with thick safety manuals and highly trained inspectors.
Obviously not.
It violently, chaotically sparked into existence during the late 19th century. Specifically, the real public electricity supply kicked off around 1882, right at the Holborn Viaduct in London.
1882. Wow.
Yeah. They fired up the generators, and suddenly everyone wanted this magic, glowing glass bulb in their parlor. But here's the terrifying part. Back then, the very first version of a Sparky wasn't an electrical engineer.
What were they?
They were essentially just glorified plumbers. Or honestly, just incredibly brave, highly reckless souls who owned a pair of thinly insulated pliers and had enough misplaced confidence to walk into a wealthy Victorian home and start running wires.
Wait, hold up. A glorified plumber. I need to wrap my head around this.
Yeah, seriously.
I get that they didn't have the modern science nailed down perfectly in the 1880s, but did these early Victorian electricians even fundamentally grasp what electricity actually was?
Not really in the way we do now.
I mean, think about a plumber. A plumber clearly understands how water flows through a lead pipe.
Yeah.
They understand water pressure, gravity, leaks. They can visually see the water.
Right, it's tangible.
If there's a leak in the pipe, the wooden floor gets wet, you see a puddle, you fix the pipe. But electricity is entirely invisible.
Completely invisible.
You can't see the electrons moving. Were they literally just treating electrical current like it was invisible water flowing through copper pipes?
That's exactly it.
Completely blind to the fact that a leak in this invisible water wouldn't just ruin the rug, it would instantly stop their heart or burn the entire neighborhood to the ground.
That is precisely the terrifying historical reality of it. They conceptualized it almost exactly like plumbing, which led to horrifying installation practices.
I can only imagine.
The early domestic wiring jobs were an absolute dog's dinner.
A dog's dinner.
Yeah, and by a dog's dinner, I mean a complete and utter mess. A job done so incredibly badly and disorganized that it looks like a bowl of sloppy, leftover food violently thrown onto the floor by a dog.
Oh man, that paints a picture.
They didn't have modern plastics or PVC to protect the wires, so they were taking completely bare, raw, uninsulated, live copper wires and literally tacking them directly onto dry wooden skirting boards.
You're kidding me.
Nope. Tacked right onto the plaster walls inside these incredibly flammable old Victorian homes.
That is insane.
No plastic sheathing, no tough rubber insulation, no protective metal conduits, just raw, 100% live electricity sitting bare right against dry, century-old wood.
Good grief.
It was an absolute recipe for a housewarming party nobody wanted.
Okay, what does that mean?
Which is just a bit of dark, grim humor to describe a catastrophic, tragic house fire.
Oh, yikes.
You move into a beautiful new Victorian home. You want to warm it up with your new lights, but you definitely don't want to warm it up by burning the entire structure and everything you own completely to the ground.
That is absolutely horrifying to even picture in my mind. Bare, live copper wires nailed to dry, dusty wood.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
It makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's like they were building giant house-sized toasters, plugging them in, and then inviting their wives and children to sleep peacefully inside them.
Literally living inside a toaster.
It really highlights how much of an experimental Wild West frontier it was.
Mm-hmm.
Every single wealthy home that wanted this new luxury was essentially acting as a beta test for a highly lethal, fundamentally misunderstood technology.
They really were.
They were gambling with their lives just to avoid lighting a gas lamp. But man, speaking of lethal technology and taming raw power, stop walking for just a second. Hold up.
What's up?
Do you hear that? As we're walking under these massive, towering overhead power lines crossing the river valley right here.
Oh, yeah.
Let's listen to the air.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
You hear it, that low, steady, vibrating hum. You don't just hear it, it's almost something you feel vibrating deep in your molars.
Yes.
It's a very distinct, heavy, aggressive buzz radiating right through the humid morning air. It feels heavy.
It really does. That hum is intense. It feels like pure contained violence.
Absolutely.
And honestly, it is the absolute perfect transition into what happened next in the grand history of the Sparky. Because that humming sound right above our heads, that is the sound of alternating current, AC power. And that specific hum represents the direct aftermath of what history calls the War of Currents.
Ah, the War of Currents.
We went from those terrifying, chaotic, Victorian bare wires nailed to baseboards to this massive, highly engineered grid-scale infrastructure. And it didn't happen peacefully.
Not at all.
It was a total bitter battle of scientific ideologies. On one side of the ring, you had Thomas Edison, the famous, incredibly stubborn American inventor, aggressively pushing for direct current, or DC power, to become the standard.
Right, good old Edison.
And on the exact opposite side, you had Nikola Tesla, the brilliant, eccentric Serbian-American visionary, fighting tooth and nail for alternating current, AC.
And we all know exactly who won that bitter war. Tesla completely pulled the strings for the entire future of the modern Starkey.
He really did.
Tesla's mathematical victory is the exact reason why every single electrician working today, 100 years later, still has to deal with that specific 50 hertz hum we are hearing right now.
That exact hum.
They have to deal with all the incredibly specific, lethal, terrifying dangers of alternating current. Tesla proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that AC was vastly superior for building a national grid.
How so? Like mechanically?
Well, because AC power can be easily stepped up by massive transformers to staggering, mind-boggling voltages for long-distance transport across entire countries.
Okay, got it.
And then at the very last second, step back down by local transformers to a safe enough pressure so you can safely boil water in your kitchen to make a cup of tea. Or a brew, as the British Sparkies would always call it.
Right, a brew. But wait, this is exactly where my brain gets hung up on the logic.
Where's the hang-up?
Okay, so we had this modern Sparky, right? And because Tesla won this war, electricians are basically the direct modern-day descendants of Zeus.
Zeus, I like that.
I mean, think about the mythology. The king of the Olympian gods, Zeus, was famous for just standing on top of Mount Olympus and chucking raw, destructive thunderbolts around the sky to smite his enemies.
Right, settling his petty scores.
Exactly. But the modern Sparky actually has to take that exact same raw, elemental, destructive lightning, tame it, and carefully, meticulously force it into a tiny, innocent-looking 1.5 millimeter twin and earth cable hidden in your wall.
It's a lot of pressure.
Every single time a Sparky opens up a live distribution board in a dark basement, they're essentially staring down the business end of a live lightning bolt.
They really are.
It's purely their technical discipline, their math, and their steady hands that stops a domestic kitchen from turning into a Greek tragedy, where a simple toaster malfunction ends in a bolt from the blue, completely leveling the house next door.
It's high stakes.
So here's what I don't get. If AC power is inherently that dangerous, if it is literally the wrath of the gods flowing through our walls that requires these highly trained wizards to contain it, why on earth didn't society just stick to Edison's much safer, lower voltage DC power?
It's a fair question.
Why didn't we just choose the safer, gentler route and completely avoid turning our domestic homes into potential explosive hazards in the first place?
It is a fantastic question, and it really comes down to the brutal, unforgiving laws of physical transmission laws.
Transmission laws.
Yeah. If we had decided to stick with Edison's safe, low-voltage DC power, powering a modern nation would not have been a piece of cake.
Meaning?
Meaning it wouldn't have been something incredibly easy and simple to pull off. In fact, taming electricity on a national scale is the exact opposite of a piece of cake.
Okay, walk me through the physics.
Here is the physical reality. With direct current, the power drops off dramatically over distance. It bleeds out into the wire as heat. It's called resistance.
Oh, I remember that from science class.
Exactly. If you push DC through a long wire, the wire fights back, heats up, and eats the energy. If you wanted to power a major city like London or New York purely with Edison's DC, you couldn't just build one massive, efficient power plant outside the city.
What would you have to do?
You would have needed a dirty, loud, coal-fired power plant right smack in the middle of every single neighborhood.
Oh, well.
Basically a smokestack on every single street corner just to push the power a few blocks before it died out.
That sounds awful.
You absolutely could not generate clean power at a giant waterfall hundreds of miles away and send it to the city. The resistance of the long copper wires would eat every single drop of energy before it ever reached a light bulb.
So Tesla was the only way.
Tesla's alternating current was the only physical, mathematical way to generate massive, unimaginable power incredibly far away, push it at insanely high pressure. We're talking hundreds of thousands of volts so it survives the long journey without bleeding out.
Right.
And then mechanically reduce the pressure at the very last second before it enters your television set.
That makes sense.
But because society made that choice for efficiency and distance, the Sparky was violently forced to evolve. They couldn't be glorified plumbers anymore. They had to become absolute highly educated masters of this highly volatile, invisible energy.
Okay, that makes total, absolute sense when you break it down like that. We essentially made a societal trade. We traded local, inherent safety for long-distance efficiency and cleaner cities.
Exactly.
And by making that trade, we basically hired a Sparky to manage the deadly risk on our behalf. We completely outsourced the danger of the lightning bolt to the electrician.
We did.
Which actually brings us perfectly to this incredibly interesting, weird structure we are walking up on right now.
Oh, look at that.
Look at this massive thing nestled right into the dirt bank by the river trail. It's an old, overgrown World War II-era bunker, or maybe some kind of heavy reinforced concrete retaining wall.
It looks intense.
But look at the architecture of it. It is so brutally rigid, so severe, so imposing. It's just a thick, gray, uncompromising slab of utilitarian defense.
Very brutalist.
There is absolutely nothing pretty or decorative about it. It is pure function, pure order, heavily built to protect whatever was behind it against complete violent chaos.
I see it. It is massive. The moss is barely even gripping the concrete. And honestly, looking at that rigid defensive structure perfectly mirrors exactly what happened to the electrical trade as the 20th century started rolling on.
How so?
Well, the complete unregulated chaos of the Victorian spicy spaghetti just couldn't continue.
Right, too many fires.
Exactly. As more and more homes got wired up, the fires were increasing, the electrocutions were increasing, the need for strict, uncompromising, absolute order became blindingly obvious to everyone.
They needed rules.
Society desperately needed a bunker. They needed a defensive concrete wall against the chaos of this invisible electricity. And that is exactly when the Institution of Electrical Engineers, which is now known as the IET over in the UK, finally stepped up and started laying down the absolute law. They created the famous wiring regulations. They essentially built the metaphorical concrete walls and the rigid rules to keep everyone in the country safe from the lightning in their walls.
And the historical timing of this is so fascinating to me, especially standing here looking at this WWII bunker. Because the direct aftermath of the Second World War drastically, fundamentally shaped how those strict regulations were actually applied in everyday British homes.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the UK right after the war. Entire cities had been bombed out. They needed to rebuild millions of homes, but there were massive, crippling material shortages.
Right. Materials were scarce.
Copper, the absolute lifeblood of electrical wiring, was incredibly expensive, highly rationed, and incredibly hard to come by. So the electrical engineers at the IET had to get brilliant.
What did they do?
They couldn't just throw miles of thick copper into every house. They invented something uniquely British called the ring main circuit.
The ring main?
Yeah. In America, we run a radial circuit, meaning a single dead-end wire runs from the breaker box to the first outlet, then to the second, then to the third, and stops. It uses a ton of copper wire.
Right, straight line.
But the British engineers ran a loop, a continuous, unbroken ring of wire that starts at the fuse box, visits every single outlet in the entire room, and then literally returns back to the exact same fuse box.
Oh, wow.
This meant the electricity could flow in two separate directions around the ring to reach any single plug. Because the load was shared across two paths, it meant they could use much, much thinner copper wire, saving massive, unprecedented amounts of material for the war recovery effort.
Exactly. The sheer amount of heavy copper saved by the invention of the ring main was staggering. Just to throw out a ballpark figure.
A ballpark figure.
Yeah, and a ballpark figure is just a rough, unscientific estimate to give you an idea of the massive scale we're talking about. So as a ballpark figure, they saved thousands upon thousands of tons of copper across the entire country during that desperate post-war rebuilding effort.
That is incredible.
It was an economic necessity. But as with all engineering, there was a major catch.
There's always a catch.
Always. Because the wire hidden inside the plastered walls was now much thinner to save money, that thin wire physically could not handle a massive power surge if a device suddenly failed.
Oh, right.
If a heater short-circuited, the thin wire in the wall would instantly overheat, melt its insulation, and start a raging house fire long before the main heavy-duty fuse at the central box ever tripped.
That's terrifying. The wall becomes the fuse.
Exactly. The walls themselves became the weak link. So the engineers had to invent a secondary, highly localized line of defense to protect the thin wire.
What was it?
And that specific invention is arguably Britain's single greatest, most robust, and most famous contribution to everyday domestic health and safety. The legendary, famously chunky, incredibly heavy 13-amp plug.
Oh, boy.
That massive, blocky plug became the absolute foundation, the bread and butter of the Sparky's domestic work.
Okay, stop right there. The British 13-amp plug. We absolutely have to talk about this thing.
I knew you'd have thoughts on this.
Because as an American, the first time I traveled to London and looked at that specific plug, I thought it was a joke. It is terrifyingly large.
It is chunky.
It is enormous. It looks like a heavy piece of military hardware meant for a tank, not a bedside lamp. And I'm going to genuinely challenge you on this being some kind of marvel of brilliant engineering.
Oh, really?
Yes. I honestly think it might just be an oversized, clunky, painful, outdated relic that they refuse to modernize. If you have ever been in the UK, woken up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and accidentally stepped on one of those plugs barefoot in the dark. Because they are perfectly weighted, so they always land on the floor with those 3 massive blunt brass prongs pointing straight up into the air like an anti-tank caltrop.
It's true. They always land prongs up.
It is a level of sudden, agonizing pain that genuinely makes stepping on a sharp Lego brick feel like a gentle foot massage at a spa. It will drop you to your knees.
It is the worst pain.
So is it really a brilliant, necessary piece of safety engineering? Or did they just accidentally over-engineer a medieval torture device in the 1940s and stubbornly refuse to update it for modern times?
Okay, I will absolutely concede that stepping on a British plug in the dark is a near-death experience.
Thank you.
It is pure, blinding agony that words can barely describe. But I will fiercely, passionately defend the hidden engineering inside that chunky plastic shell.
Contend away.
It is pure, unadulterated genius. Because they created that ring main circuit with the dangerously thin wire hidden in the walls, they physically had to put the heavy protection directly at the source of the problem.
Okay.
That giant plug isn't just a dumb connector linking a wire to a wall. It is a highly active, self-contained safety bunker.
Wait, really? What's inside it?
Inside every single plug, hidden under a little plastic hatch, is a tiny, replaceable, physical ceramic fuse.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah. If your hairdryer suddenly shorts out in your hand and violently draws too much power, the tiny ceramic fuse inside the plug gets incredibly hot, and the tiny wire inside it melts and blows immediately.
Oh, wow.
It physically breaks the circuit, cutting the lethal power right there in your hand in a fraction of a second, long before the thin wires deep inside your plastered walls even get warm. It stops the house fire before it starts.
That is actually really smart.
And those 3 massive, painful prongs you stepped on, look at them closely next time. The top one, the earth pin, is significantly longer and thicker than the other 2 lower pins.
Why is that?
Because when you push that plug into the wall socket, that long, heavy earth pin goes in first, and it mechanically, physically pushes open heavy internal plastic shutters inside the wall socket, which then, and only then, allows the live and neutral pins to safely enter.
No way. Shutters.
Yes. It is physically, mechanically impossible for a curious toddler to stick a metal fork or a key into the live wall socket because those heavy plastic shutters will absolutely not open unless the long earth pin pushes the mechanism first.
That is brilliant.
It is a fail-safe, purely mechanical design that has saved countless lives.
Wow. Okay, I stand completely 100% corrected on that. I had absolutely no idea about the physical plastic shutters opening up inside the wall like a bank vault door.
It's pretty cool, right?
That is actually incredible mechanical engineering from the 1940s. I will gladly endure the midnight foot pain knowing that it is actively, mechanically preventing children from accidentally electrocuting themselves.
It's worth the bruised heel.
So we've moved from the terrifying chaos of bare Victorian wires tacked to wood to this highly regulated, physically engineered, fail-safe safety system born out of wartime necessity.
Exactly.
And as we keep walking down this path, oh, look down there just ahead. We are coming up to a sharp bend in the river. And look at how the water is getting violently squeezed.
Oh, no.
Look at how the river hits that narrow, jagged bottleneck right between those two huge gray boulders. The water was perfectly calm and flat a minute ago, but right there at the pinch point, it is speeding up dramatically, it's churning wildly, it's foaming bright white as it violently fights to rip through that tight, restrictive space.
Man, that is a phenomenal, perfect visual in nature. The water violently churning and backing up as it fights through that tight, rocky gap perfectly illustrates the absolute technical, invisible guts of what a Sparky actually does for a living.
Does it really?
Yes, it perfectly illustrates the hidden physics of the bang. Because to the uninitiated, to a homeowner just watching an electrician work in their kitchen, the job might honestly look like a simple, glorified matching game.
Right, just matching colors?
Just connecting the red wire to the red terminal and the black wire to the black terminal. Or if we are talking about the modern, harmonized European colors that everyone uses now, connecting the brown wire to the brown terminal and the blue wire to the blue terminal.
It looks so easy.
It looks incredibly simple on the surface, but beneath that simple, color-coded exterior is a violent world of invisible physics that is constantly, relentlessly trying to break out of its copper cage.
And that tight bottleneck right there in the river squeezing the water is the absolute perfect natural analogy for Ohm's law.
Ohm's law, let's hear it.
Ohm's law is the absolute foundational, fundamental physical law of electricity. It is the permanent, invisible, brutal three-way tug of war between voltage, current, and resistance.
Right.
To visualize it, think of voltage as the massive heavy water pressure pushing the river forward down the valley. The current is the actual physical volume of the water, the thousands of gallons per minute flowing past our boots right now.
Got it.
And the resistance is exactly that tight, jagged bottleneck between the rocks, physically fighting the flow, squeezing it, backing the water up, and creating violent friction and heat. Every single wire, every single switch, every single toaster or television in your house is essentially an engineered bottleneck.
Precisely. Electricity is just electrons looking for the easiest, fastest path back to the source. And the absolute primary technical hurdle for the Sparky, the thing that keeps them up at night, is managing exactly what happens when those physical rules get violently broken.
Which means what?
Which in the trade is called a fault current. Let's say your toaster goes completely rogue. A live heating wire inside snaps from old age and touches the outer metal pacing that your hand touches.
Oh, that's bad.
Suddenly, the engineered resistance drops to absolute zero. The bottleneck is completely gone. The river of electricity has no rocks in its way. A massive, catastrophic, violent surge of electrical current rushes through the wire.
So what stops it?
The Sparky's invisible handiwork. Specifically, a highly complex mathematical calculation they perform called the earth loop impedance.
Earth loop impedance.
Right, it determines exactly what happens next. If the Sparky did their math perfectly and sized the wires correctly, the resistance on the safety earth wire is low enough that a massive, clean surge of power rushes all the way back to the fuse box and instantly magnetically trips the circuit breaker, violently shutting off the power in a fraction of a heartbeat.
Oh, phew.
It's a total no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Meaning it's an absolute given, a decision or outcome that requires zero debate, because obviously you want that deadly power to cut off instantly before it reaches your heart.
Right. But what if the Sparky was lazy? What if they got the earth loop impedance math wrong? What if they used a wire that was slightly too thin or left a screw slightly loose inside a junction box, acting like an accidental hidden bottleneck in the safety path?
If they do that, the resistance in the safety wire is too high. The massive surge of electricity hits that loose screw, and the current can't flow fast enough to trip the heavy breaker.
So the power just stays on.
The power keeps flowing. The loose connection heats up rapidly, acting like a tiny electric heater inside your wall. The plastic insulation melts, the wood framing catches, and suddenly your entire living room wall is glowing bright orange like a grilled cheese sandwich left on the stove too long.
Oh my God.
Right before it bursts into a raging fire. It is literally life or death mathematics. The Sparky isn't just matching colors, they are calculating the precise physical limits of catastrophic failure.
That is a massive amount of pressure.
And to make their lives even more complicated today, to add a whole new layer of complex physics, we have to talk about what I love to call The Tesla Shuffle.
The Tesla Shuffle. Okay, that sounds like a forgotten, jazzy 1920s dance move you'd do at a speakeasy. What on earth is the Tesla Shuffle?
It essentially is a dance, but it's a violent, modern, invisible dance of electricity happening in almost every single new, eco-friendly home being built today.
Okay, I'm listening.
Remember our old friends Edison and Tesla, the bitter fight between low-voltage DC and high-voltage AC? Well, modern solar panels that people are putting on their roofs today natively generate direct current DC. It comes straight off the panel as a flat, continuous push of DC. But your entire house, all your appliances, run on Tesla's alternating current AC.
No, I see the problem.
You cannot plug an AC television into a DC solar panel. It will explode. So the Sparky has to install a massive, heavy device called an inverter, usually bolted to the wall in the garage or the loft.
An inverter.
This inverter takes that raw, flat, continuous DC power from the sun and violently chops it up into tiny pieces, flipping the current back and forth 50 times every single second.
50 times a second.
It is essentially doing a high-speed, invisible tap dance, artificially recreating an AC power wave so your house doesn't have a massive wobbler.
Have a wobbler.
And having a wobbler is a fantastic piece of British slang. It means to throw a massive, screaming tantrum, to completely lose your temper, or in the case of a sensitive electronic house, to violently short out, spark, and malfunction wildly.
Okay, got it.
The inverter performs the complex Tesla Shuffle every second of the day, just to keep the peace between the sun and your TV.
Okay, I really want to make sure I am visualizing this Tesla Shuffle mechanism correctly in my head. Let me try an analogy on you, taking it back to the water pipes.
Go for it.
So, DC power from the solar panel is like a steady, smooth, continuous stream of water blasting out of garden hose, just a flat, constant forward push.
Yep, that's DC.
But AC power, alternating current, is like the water inside the pipe is violently sloshing forward, and backward, exactly 50 times every single second.
Exactly.
So is this modern solid-state inverter basically acting like a robotic, highly complex, rhythmic water pump? Is it taking the steady, continuous stream of DC water from the roof and using tiny electronic switches to mechanically jerk it back and forth 50 times a second, artificially mimicking the sloshing AC water so the washing machine doesn't freak out and melt? Is that physically what it is doing?
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize the physics.
Yes.
Yes. It is exactly a rhythmic, high-speed electronic pump transforming a steady push into a violent, oscillating slosh.
Wow.
Inside that box, tiny transistors, basically microscopic electronic gates, are opening and slamming shut thousands of times a second to physically chop the DC into a wave.
That's amazing.
And here is where the Sparky's job gets even crazier. The precision required by that inverter to perfectly, exactly match the frequency of the massive national grid outside your house is staggering.
How exact does it have to be?
The sloshing water created by your garage inverter must perfectly, exactly align with the sloshing water coming from the giant nuclear power plant hundreds of miles away. If your inverter is even a fraction of a millisecond out of sync, the waves crash into each other, the whole system violently fights itself, and the entire grid crashes.
You're kidding. A fraction of a millisecond.
It is a delicate, invisible, high-stakes ballet of raw power. And man, speaking of raw power, heavy machinery and massive disruption, brace yourself. Pull your collar up over your mouth.
Whoa.
We are coming up to a section of the river trail here where the park maintenance workers are doing some extremely serious heavy lifting.
Oh man, yeah, I see it. Let's pull our jackets up over our noses.
So dusty.
They're literally digging up the entire solid dirt path with a massive diesel-spewing mini excavator and heavy pneumatic jackhammers.
Yeah.
The noise is absolutely deafening. My ears are ringing just getting near it.
It's so loud.
There are sharp chunks of limestone rock flying everywhere, and there is a massive, choking, thick gray dust cloud hanging in the humid air right over the path. We're going to get absolutely covered in grit and dirt just walking through this construction zone.
It's totally unavoidable. Just keep your head down and walk fast.
Trying.
But you know what? This chaotic, incredibly noisy, physically exhausting, dusty mess of a construction site is the ultimate, perfect, real-world reflection of the first phase of an electrician's job.
Really? I didn't think it was this messy.
Oh, yeah. When people picture an electrician, they usually picture a clean guy in a polo shirt, twisting a tiny wire with a little screwdriver. But in the actual trade, a complete electrical installation in a house is a brutal two-act play.
A two-act play.
Act 1 is what they universally call the first fix. And the first fix is exactly what we are walking through right now. It is brutal, miserable, back-breaking, physical labor.
I can only imagine. The first fix is pure demolition.
It really is.
If a Sparky is hired to rewire an old brick-built Victorian house, they aren't just taping wires to the wall anymore. They're literally taking a heavy steel hammer and a cold metal chisel, or a massive vibrating SDS drill, and they are aggressively, violently smashing Jeep channels into perfectly good, solid brick walls just to create a physical hiding place for the new plastic conduits and cables.
That's exactly it.
They call it chasing the walls. It is incredibly loud, it is violently exhausting on the shoulders, and the immense amount of fine, red, microscopic brick dust it creates gets absolutely everywhere.
Oh, the dust is the worst part.
It coats your lungs, it gets onto your eyelids, it gets in your hair, it ruins your packed sandwich at lunch. It is the kind of grueling, unglamorous, sweaty labor that really separates the wheat from the chaff.
Separates the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, you know that old farming idea where you shake the harvest to separate the highly skilled, dedicated, valuable professionals who will push through the pain from the lazy amateur workers who just want an easy paycheck and will quit after an hour of choking on brick dust.
It is the ultimate test of endurance. A lot of young apprentices quit during the first fix. It is dirty, dark, and horrible.
I bet.
But if you survive it, once the brutal first fix is finally over, the heavy cables are buried in the brick, the walls are plastered over smooth, and the red dust finally settles, the Sparky gets to completely shift gears and move on to Act 2.
Act 2.
The second fix. And this is where the pure aesthetic magic of the trade happens.
The second fix. This is the delicate work, the clean work. This is the final installation of the fancy brushed steel light switches, the shiny sockets, and, most importantly, the absolute crown jewel, the focal point of the entire house's electrical system, the consumer unit.
The consumer unit.
Or, as we used to call it in the old days, the main fuse box. I was reading a trade forum, and I learned that a top-tier master Sparky takes immense, almost obsessive pride in exactly how they dress the consumer unit.
Oh, they definitely do.
They use a specific slang term, and I honestly couldn't believe it when I first heard it, but they call it cable porn.
Cable porn, yep.
Which means the internal wiring hidden inside that plastic box is routed so perfectly, so beautifully, so symmetrically, with right angles bent so incredibly crisp and parallel lines running so flawless that looking at it could literally bring a tear to a glass eye.
Yeah.
It is a complete, uncompromising obsession with hidden aesthetic perfection.
It's a true art form.
But wait, hold on a second. I need to push back on this entire concept of cable porn, because honestly, I find this completely, utterly baffling from a business perspective.
Why is that?
Why on earth do these highly paid professionals care so deeply, investing hours and hours of extra unpaid labor into the aesthetic, artistic beauty of wires hidden inside a closed gray plastic box?
It seems crazy, right?
The homeowner, the person paying the massive bill, is literally never, ever going to open that box and look inside unless the power completely goes out. And even then, they don't know what they're looking at. They just flip the plastic switch.
Sure.
Why spend hours building a hidden masterpiece in the dark? Isn't it just egocentric, massive waste of time and money if nobody ever sees it?
It is a completely fair assumption, and it definitely seems totally illogical from the outside looking in. But you have to fundamentally understand the culture of the trade. It is not about vanity or showing off. It is about absolute, rigorous, uncompromising safety and future diagnostics.
Okay, explain that.
Think of it this way. A consumer unit is the central brain of the entire house. Every single wire terminates there. If there is a catastrophic, mysterious electrical failure 10 years from now, and a completely different electrician is called out at 2 a.m. in an emergency to figure out why the kitchen is slowly filling with acrid electrical smoke, they have to open that box.
Right.
If they open it and find a chaotic, tangled bird's nest of unmarked wires, more of that deadly, spicy spaghetti, it could take them 3 hours just to physically trace which wire goes to the kitchen.
Oh, man.
And in an electrical fire, hours cost lives and thousands of dollars in property damage.
That makes total sense.
But if they pop that cover off and immediately see cable porn wires perfectly routed, perfectly parallel, neatly and clearly labeled, stripped to the exact millimeter, they can instantly, immediately trace the fault and cut the power.
Go to a map.
It's exactly like reading a perfectly printed high-definition map instead of trying to read a crumpled, coffee-stained napkin. The aesthetic beauty isn't art for art's sake. It is a direct byproduct of extreme, professional, life-saving discipline.
Okay, wow. So it's aesthetic beauty acting purely as a function of ultimate long-term safety. It is a Sparky, leaving a clean, perfectly readable map for the next explorer who comes along in 10 years.
Exactly.
That is a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
That actually demands a massive amount of respect. It's an invisible legacy.
It really is.
Speaking of paths and moving forward, look at this. Our dirt trail just hit a massive dead end, or at least a highly official roadblock.
Oh, what is that?
Look at this heavy, solid wooden gate completely blocking the path ahead. It has a giant, thick metal padlock on it and a big, bright red, highly intimidating sign right in the middle that says, "No entry authorized personnel only."
Well, look at that. We just walked right into the perfect, imposing physical reflection of modern electrical legislation in the UK.
Legislation.
Yeah, that locked gate telling us regular folks that we absolutely aren't allowed to pass without official government authorization is exactly what happened to the electrical trade in the UK back in the year 2005.
2005.
The UK government looked at the safety statistics and dropped a massive, highly controversial bureaucratic bombshell known as Part P of the building regulations. And Part P essentially took a giant, heavy padlock and erected a massive locked gate entirely around the electrical trade.
Right. From what I've read about it, the introduction of Part P was essentially the absolute death knell for the DIY weekend warrior in the UK.
Total death knell.
Before 2005, a highly confident, completely unqualified homeowner could just head down to the local hardware store on a Saturday morning, buy a spool of thick cable, and happily try to wire up a brand new high-voltage electric shower directly over their bathtub.
Which is terrifying.
But Part P made doing your own electrical work in what the government deems special locations, which is primarily the bathroom, a room where standing water and high-voltage electricity absolutely despise each other and actively plot to murder you, highly illegal.
Highly illegal.
You cannot touch it unless you are officially, legally certified as a competent person.
Exactly. It completely fundamentally transformed the trade overnight from a slightly open Wild West into a heavily guarded, closed shop.
How hard is it to get certified?
Today, to legally sign off on a new consumer unit or a bathroom circuit, a Sparky can't just be incredibly good with their hands and wire snippers. They have to be officially, expensively registered with government-approved regulatory bodies.
Right, cool.
These are massive organizations with thick alphabet soup acronyms like the NICEIC or NAPIT. The Sparkies have to pay incredibly heavy annual registration fees.
Ouch.
They have to undergo rigorous, highly stressful, unannounced physical inspections of their recent jobs by master inspectors.
Yeah.
And the sheer mind-numbing volume of mandatory paperwork they have to produce for every single job is now as thick and heavy as a brick.
A brick of paperwork for one job.
Yes, they have to generate pages and pages of multi-part...
And just to clarify for everyone listening, these mandatory Part P tests aren't just a guy flipping a switch and saying, "Yep, the light bulb turns on, looks good to me," right?
Not at all.
They are deep, microscopic, highly technical audits of the exact invisible physics we were talking about earlier at the River Rocks. They're testing things like insulation resistance.
Right.
Meaning they take a massive, expensive meter and literally blast the copper wires inside the walls with 500 volts of pure DC power just to mathematically prove that the microscopic plastic coating on the wire hasn't been nicked by a rogue drywall screw.
Exactly.
They're testing polarity, ensuring the power is flowing in the exact precise right direction so the switches actually turn the power off at the source.
Yeah.
And they're testing those RCD trip times.
The trip times are crucial.
Which means they're using machine to measure in literal fractional milliseconds exactly how fast the magnetic safety breaker shuts off the power if they simulate a deadly fault.
Yeah.
If those final numbers don't add up perfectly on the testing meter, the whole job is an absolute goner. Meaning the job is completely ruined, it has totally failed the legal inspection, and it absolutely cannot be legally certified or signed off.
It's a disaster.
The electrician has to pack away the heavy paperwork, go all the way back to the drawing board, literally tear up the customer's expensive floorboards, and desperately try to find the one tiny, microscopic, loose neutral wire tucked somewhere in the dark ceiling that is playing silly buggers with their highly sensitive meter readings.
Yes. Playing silly buggers. That is a brilliant classic British phrase.
Right. I love that one.
It just means something is behaving in a highly frustrating, uncooperative, or completely nonsensical way that defies logic. One single tiny loose wire playing silly buggers deep in a plaster wall can easily cost an electrician 3 entire days of unpaid, highly stressful labor just hunting it down so the meter finally reads green.
That sounds miserable. But let me be deeply cynical here for just a second. Let me play the devil's advocate regarding this locked gate we are standing in front of.
Okay, let's hear.
All these mandatory government registrations, the confusing acronyms, the massive annual fees, the thick bricks of mandatory paperwork. Is this truly, genuinely about saving human lives? Or is this just a massive, manufactured, highly lucrative government scheme to collect endless registration fees and force a monopoly for the big companies?
It's a fair point to bring up.
Because looking at it from the outside, it sounds exactly like a bureaucratic mafia demanding a heavy cut of the blue-collar Sparky's hard-earned cash just to give them a fancy paper stamp of approval.
It is incredibly easy to view it cynically, and honestly, a massive number of old-school, highly experienced electricians complained bitterly and loudly about the exorbitant fees and the suffocating red tape when Part P was first introduced.
I bet they did.
Many just retired early, but you absolutely have to look at the grim, undeniable safety statistics from before Part P existed. People were genuinely dying, totally unnecessarily, in their own bathrooms.
Okay.
Yes. A small domestic bathroom is the ultimate perfect kill box for electricity. You are soaking wet, you are completely barefoot, you are standing on highly conductive ceramic tile, and you are entirely perfectly grounded to the earth through the water pipes.
Oh, man. Would you say it like that?
If an amateur weekend DIY enthusiast hooks up a high-powered heated towel rail incorrectly, leaving a wire exposed, and you touch it with wet hands, you don't just get a painful little static shock. The resistance is so low that your heart stops instantly.
That is horrific.
The paperwork is exhausting, the fees are high, yes, but that official Part P certificate handed to the homeowner is literally the seal of the gods. It is the legally binding, mathematically proven guarantee that no amateur hour idiot has inadvertently unleashed the lethal wrath of Zeus in your downstairs loo.
The seal of the gods.
The heavy bureaucracy is simply the heavy price society pays for guaranteeing you actually survive your morning shower.
Okay, when you frame it as surviving the morning shower, the thick stack of paperwork suddenly seems like an incredible bargain. The seal of the gods in the downstairs loo. I like that phrasing.
It's accurate.
Well, since this gate is locked tight, let's just slip through this little overgrown side path here, right around the fence.
Yeah, it looks clear.
It looks like it opens back up onto the main paved road. Whoa.
Wow.
We just stepped out of the dense, dark woods, and the view just totally, massively opened up. Look at the top of that massive hill right across the water.
That is wild.
That house is unbelievable. It honestly looks like a sleek spaceship just landed on a rocky cliff. The architecture is ultra-modern. It's all floor-to-ceiling glass and black steel. And the entire roof, every single square inch of it, is completely covered in sleek, black, perfectly integrated solar panels.
Oh, that is a truly stunning piece of modern architecture. And that house right there, that gleaming high-tech eco-fortress sitting on the hill, is exactly what the future landscape looks like for the modern Sparky.
The eco-fortress.
We have traced their entire history today. We tracked them from the muddy, primitive Victorian water mills through the dusty, brick-chasing first fixes, and now they are standing right at the absolute threshold of the Green Revolution.
The Green Revolution.
The Sparky of tomorrow isn't just a tough, calloused tradesperson pulling heavy, dirty cables through rat-infested crawl spaces. The entire profession is rapidly, violently being forced to evolve into highly sophisticated, hybrid tech wizards.
The Green Revolution is completely, fundamentally changing the game. The sheer volume and complexity of new technology being bolted onto the side of modern houses is staggering.
It's massive.
The traditional trade is aggressively pivoting away from just hanging light fixtures. Now, the big money is all about installing massive, high-amperage, heavy-duty EV chargers for electric vehicles in the driveway.
Everyone wants an EV charger now.
It is wiring up those complex, high-voltage solar PV arrays on the roof and integrating massive, heavy, highly volatile chemical battery storage systems in the garage so the house can literally hoard sunlight during the day to use at night.
And honestly, the most historically ironic part of all of this technological advancement,
What's that?
the modern world is actually quietly moving right back toward Thomas Edison's beloved direct current.
DC power. Wait, really?
It really is a massive, hilarious historical irony. Edison completely lost the bitter war of currents over a century ago, but his low-voltage DC power is making a massive, stealthy comeback inside our modern homes.
How so?
Just look around your house today. The USB sockets you use to charge your smartphone, the LED drivers powering your ultra-efficient strip lighting, your laptop chargers, your smart speakers, they all natively run on Edison's low-voltage DC power.
I never thought about that.
But Tesla's heavy, dangerous, high-voltage AC grid is still absolutely fundamentally necessary to do the heavy lifting to get the immense power from the offshore wind farm hundreds of miles away all the way to your front door.
So they're living side by side.
Exactly. So the modern Sparky now acts as the ultimate highly stressed mediator. They're standing exactly on the boundary line between the ancient, roaring, highly lethal AC power of the national grid and the delicate, highly sensitive, microscopic, low-voltage DC brains of a modern smart home.
And those modern smart homes, man, they sound like an absolute mind-bending headache to actually install and troubleshoot.
Total nightmare.
We aren't just talking about a simple mechanical copper light switch on the wall snapping on and off anymore. The modern Sparky is now found gingerly routing incredibly delicate, sensitive CCIQ's data cables for highly complex, computerized home automation systems.
Right, the smart hubs.
Things like massive Lutron lighting rigs or central control for automation hubs that run the entire house from an iPad. And the microscopic precision required for this new work is terrifying.
Absolutely.
In a traditional old-school house, if a thick copper wire is a little bit loose, maybe a single light bulb flickers slightly when you walk heavy on the floor.
No big deal.
But in a fully integrated, computerized smart home, a single, tiny, poorly crimped piece of data cable hidden deep in a dark closet means the automated bedroom curtains flat out refuse to close, the exterior security cameras instantly go blind, and the digital smart thermostat has a complete digital nervous breakdown.
It assumes you live in Antarctica.
Assumes the living room is suddenly located in the freezing tundra of Antarctica and blasts the heating to maximum output while you are on vacation.
It is a completely different, highly elevated stress level. It requires the delicate, precise touch of a surgeon mixed seamlessly with the analytical brain of an IT technician.
It's wild.
And the future implications for the electrical trade, especially as the UK pushes aggressively and legally toward its highly ambitious net zero carbon emissions targets, are massive.
Net zero.
The government wants to completely phase out fossil fuels. They want to ban gas boilers and petrol cars entirely. Everything, absolutely everything, will run purely on electricity. Heat pumps, cars, induction stoves.
That's a huge shift.
Which means the raw, immediate demand for highly qualified, heavily certified Sparkies to completely rip out and overhaul the aging electrical infrastructure of millions of homes is expected to go absolutely straight through the roof.
Through the roof.
And when I say go through the roof, I mean the demand is going to increase so rapidly, rocketing to such incredibly high, unprecedented levels that the industry simply won't be able to keep up with the phone calls.
But there is a massive looming storm cloud right on the horizon for this industry, isn't there?
What do you mean?
Because while the consumer demand for this green tech is skyrocketing through the roof, there is a severe, crippling skills gap rapidly opening up in the labor market.
Oh, the skills gap. Yes.
The older generation, the grizzled masters who spent 40 years learning exactly how to safely wrestle with Zeus's leftovers, are retiring in droves. Their knees and backs are giving out.
It's hard work.
And the younger generation, the kids coming out of high school today, who grew up on iPads and clean tech, they aren't exactly lining up by the thousands to crawl on their bellies through suffocating, dark, 90-degree lofts full of incredibly itchy, highly irritating fiberglass wool insulation.
Just breathing in rat dust.
Exactly. Breathing in decades of highly toxic rat dust just to pull a heavy cable.
Precisely. It is still, at its core, grueling, nasty, unforgiving physical work, even with all the fancy modern technology tacked onto the end of the wire.
Right.
Because the pipeline of willing new apprentices is shrinking so rapidly, the old guard of highly experienced master Sparkies, who are still physically capable of staying in the game, are going to find themselves holding absolutely all the cards.
All the power.
In the very near future, as everything shifts to electric, they might easily be able to charge an absolute king's ransom just to show up to your house and do a simple consumer consumer unit upgrade.
A king's ransom.
And a king's ransom means a huge, almost extortionate amount of money, an absolute fortune. You are going to be paying massive, premium, elite-level prices simply because the fundamental physical skill set required to do the dangerous work is becoming incredibly rare and desperately needed by society.
Okay, but let me ask you this. As we're looking at that gleaming, ultra-modern solar house on the hill, with absolutely everything in our lives moving rapidly toward plug-and-play smart devices, wireless Wi-Fi technology, ultra-low voltage data cables, and highly prefabricated, snap-together modular electronics,
Yeah.
is the traditional wall-chasing, hammer-swinging, dust-covered Sparky slowly going extinct?
Extinct.
Are they just eventually going to be replaced by clean-handed, soft-spoken IT technicians who carry lightweight laptops in a backpack instead of heavy iron pliers? Guys who are way more comfortable sitting in a chair configuring an IP address on a router than they are physically taming the lethal high-voltage wrath of Zeus in a wet basement.
It's a very compelling futuristic theory, but honestly, I don't see the traditional heavy-duty Sparky ever truly going extinct.
Why not?
Because here is the unbreakable law of physics. You can have absolutely all the wireless, low-voltage, cloud-connected smart tech in the world floating around your living room, but that delicate tech still fundamentally completely relies on massive, heavy-duty, lethal electrical current physically entering the physical footprint of the house from the street.
Right. The power still has to get there.
Exactly. Someone, a human being with muscles and calluses, still physically has to dig the deep trench in the mud, run the heavy steel-armored cable, mathematically calculate the life or death earth loop impedance, and physically wrestle the thick, unforgiving, stiff copper wires into the main heavy-duty breaker.
And the laptop won't do that.
The IT guy with the slim laptop absolutely cannot do that. The Sparky isn't going extinct. They're just aggressively mutating to survive.
Mutating.
They have to be able to swing the heavy demolition hammer with their right hand and precisely program the delicate computerized smart hub with their left hand. They are rapidly becoming the ultimate hybrid warriors of the building trade.
Hybrid warriors. Man, I absolutely love that description. They are the tough, unsung hybrid heroes of the modern household.
They really are.
From the prehistoric, gaslit, terrifying days of the early Victorian era, all the way to this hyper-connected, artificially intelligent, solar-powered Internet of Things, they're the ones quietly, dangerously, literally making sure the entire nation doesn't end up sitting freezing in the cold and the dark.
Absolutely.
Provided, of course, that the grateful homeowner correctly supplies them with a steady, unending, perfectly brewed supply of hot tea and a heavy packet of chocolate biscuits to keep morale high on the job site.
Oh, the hot tea and the chocolate biscuits are absolutely critical load-bearing infrastructure.
It's essential.
Never, ever underestimate the sheer motivational power of a good, strong brew handed to a Sparky on a freezing cold job site. It keeps the lights on.
Well, look at exactly where we ended up on this walk. Our dirt path just fully transitioned out of the deep woods, and we are stepping right onto this massive, modern, fully paved suspension bridge crossing high over the valley.
Oh.
Feel how incredibly solid that is underfoot. The loose gravel crunching is completely gone, and now it's just the solid, heavy, rhythmic thud of our boots hitting modern, heavily engineered concrete.
It feels very different.
And man, we have a perfect, totally unobstructed panoramic view straight down the entire river valley we just spent the morning walking up.
It is quite the incredible vantage points. If you squint, you can actually see the old, mossy wooden water mill we started at way, way down there in the far distance.
Oh yeah, I see it.
It's just a tiny green speck of ancient history nestled deep in the trees. And then if you slowly pan your eyes up the winding river, past the old crumbling stone banks, past that massive concrete WWII bunker hidden in the brush, all the way up to that gleaming, high-tech, solar-powered eco-fortress sitting proudly on the hill, and finally here, standing safely on this massive steel cable marvel of modern civil engineering.
It is the absolute perfect, grand visual summary of exactly what we've been talking about this entire hike.
It really is.
Man, from that decaying old wooden mill all the way to this massive steel bridge, we have really, truly covered some incredible, vast ground today, haven't we?
We really have.
We've traced the entire chaotic, terrifying, and ultimately brilliant evolution of how humanity harnesses raw power. We started in the messy, lethal, highly unregulated, spicy spaghetti days of the Victorian era, where brave, glorified plumbers played a deadly guessing game with invisible fire.
Spicy spaghetti days.
We fought our way through the bitter war of currents, watching Edison and Tesla battle it out, realizing that taming high-voltage AC power is basically wrestling the mythological gods on a daily basis.
Wrestling Zeus.
We saw exactly how post-war necessity and copper shortages forced the brilliant physical invention of life-saving safety measures, like the continuous ring main and the incredibly painful to step on but undeniably life-saving chunky 13-amp plug.
The plug, with its hidden ceramic fuses and mechanical plastic shutters.
Exactly. We dug deep into the brutal, dusty, lung-choking reality of the first fix demolition and the highly meticulous, map-making aesthetic obsession of the second fix.
The cable porn?
We navigated the massive, heavy-locked gates of government bureaucracy and the life-saving Part P bathroom regulations. And finally, we looked out at the bright future, the green revolution, where the modern hybrid Sparky has to perfectly balance heavy-duty, roaring grid power with delicate, microscopic smart home data, all while facing a massive looming skills gap in the workforce.
It has been a truly phenomenal, eye-opening journey. And honestly, digging deeply into this completely changes how you look at the everyday, mundane world around you.
It really does.
So here is exactly what I want you, yes, you, our silent third partner, walking and listening with us today to do when you finally get off this trail and get home.
With the homework.
Take just one single moment today, walk over to your hallway or your dark garage and actually look closely at your main consumer unit. Look at the fuse box, or just pull a heavy, chunky plug out of the wall socket and hold it in the palm of your hand. Look closely at the tiny metal screws, the rigid plastic casing, the heavy prongs. Look at it with a completely newfound, deep respect. Because hidden safely inside that boring, everyday plastic shell is the invisible, roaring, lethal lightning of Zeus.
Trapped in a box.
And it is perfectly caged, perfectly tamed, exclusively because of decades of human blood, sweat, strict regulations, and the quiet, unseen, everyday genius of the Sparky.
I couldn't agree with that more.
Yeah.
It's a massive, invisible, highly engineered, tiny miracle that we completely take for granted every single time we lazily flip a plastic switch on the wall.
Exactly.
Well, we've talked the talk. Now it's time to walk the walk, meaning we've spent all this time diving deep and discussing the theory and history of all this. And now it is time to actually put our boots back to the pavement, get moving, and physically finish the rest of this incredible hike.